Ada stood at the entrance of the huge mansion, clutching her small worn out bag. The house was nothing like she had ever seen before. It was as tall as three houses stacked on top of each other, with shiny windows that sparkled in the sunlight. The walls were painted white, so clean that Ada thought they might glow in the dark. A big iron gate with golden edges opened slowly, making a creaking sound as the gateman let her in. Her heart beat fast. She wasn't sure if it was because of excitement or fear. Maybe both. This was her first job and she was determined to do well. Back home, her mother and two younger brothers had waved goodbye with smiles and tears. Ada, be strong and work hard, her mother had said, squeezing her hand. We are counting on you. Inside the compound, the flowers were bright and colorful, like something out of a picture book. The grass was cut so neatly it looked like a green carpet. A tall man in a sharp suit came out of the front door. He had a serious face, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. This was Mr. Collins, her new boss. You must be Ada, he said, looking her up and down. Come inside. His voice was deep and Ada felt a little nervous, but she nodded quickly and followed him. The inside of the house was even more beautiful than the outside. The floor was shiny like a mirror, and Ada could see her reflection as she walked. There was a giant chandelier hanging from the ceiling, sparkling like stars. The furniture looked expensive, with soft cushions that seemed too fancy to sit on. Paintings of people and places she didn't know hung on the walls, making the place feel like a museum. You will sleep in the servants' quarters at the back, Mr. Collins said, leading her through the hallway. His voice was firm, and Ada felt like she shouldn't ask too many questions. Your job is to clean, cook, and make sure everything in this house runs smoothly. Do you understand? Ada nodded quickly. Yes, sir, I understand. He stopped walking and turned to look at her. Good. If you work hard, you will stay here. If you make trouble, you will leave. It's that simple. Ada swallowed hard. Yes, sir. He nodded and walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway. For a moment, Ada felt small and out of place in the giant house. But then she remembered her mother's words. Be strong and work hard. She straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. She was here to make a better life for her family, and she wasn't going to let fear stop her. The servants' quarters were much smaller than the main house, but Ada didn't mind. It had a small bed, a table, and a window that let in plenty of sunlight. She placed her bag on the bed and sat down, feeling both tired and hopeful. This was her new beginning, and she was determined to make the best out of it. As she unpacked her new belongings, she heard voices outside. She peeked through the window and saw two other workers chatting near the kitchen door. One of them, an older woman with kind eyes and a colorful scarf on her head, waved at Ada and smiled. Ada smiled back, feeling a little less alone. Her first day ended with a simple meal of rice and vegetables in the servant's kitchen. The older woman, Auntie Ekaite, introduced herself and showed Ada around. This house is big and fancy, but don't let it scare you, Auntie Ekaite said with a chuckle. Just do your work well and you will be fine. Ada nodded, feeling a little braver. She lay on her bed that night, staring at the ceiling. She missed her family already, but she reminded herself why she was here. She was going to work hard, save money, and help her brothers go to school. With that thought, Ada closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. The days passed quickly, and Ada worked hard to please her new boss. She swept the floors until they shone, dusted every corner of the big house, and learned to cook meals exactly how Mr. Collins liked them. Even though she was working tiring, Ada felt proud. Mama will be so happy when she hears how well I'm doing, she thought. But sometimes Ada noticed strange things. Mr. Collins would watch her too closely. His eyes would follow her as she moved around the house. It made her feel uneasy, like something wasn't right. She tried to ignore it and focused on her work, but the uneasy feelings stayed with her. One evening, as Ada was cleaning the living room, Mr. Collins walked in. He sat on the sofa and watched her in silence. Ada's hands shook a little as she wiped the table. Finally, he spoke. "You are a hard worker, Ada," he said, smiling. But his smile didn't feel kind. It made her nervous. "Thank you, sir," she replied quietly, keeping her eyes on the table. He stood up and walked closer to her. "You've done a good job here. I think you deserve something nice." His voice was smooth, but Ada didn't like the way he was looking at her. She took a step back, clutching the cleaning cloth in her hand. "That's very kind of you, sir," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But I'm fine. I don't need anything." Mr. Collins chuckled and reached out to touch her shoulder. Ada flinched and stepped away quickly. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. "I should finish cleaning the kitchen," she said, her voice shaking. Without waiting for a reply, she hurried out of the room. When she reached the kitchen, her hands were trembling. Auntie Ekaite was there, chopping vegetables. She looked up and saw Ada's pale face. "What's wrong, my dear?" she asked, concern in her voice. Ada shook her head, afraid to speak. She didn't want to get into trouble, but Auntie Ekaite put down the knife and came closer. "You can tell me," she said softly. "I've been in this house long enough to know when something isn't right." Ada looked at her kind eyes and felt tears stain her own. She wanted to speak, but the words were stuck in her throat. Auntie Ekaite patted her shoulders gently. "It's okay," she said. "Whenever you are ready, I'm here to listen." That night, Ada lay in her bed, staring at the dark ceiling. She felt scared and confused. She didn't know what to do. But one thing was clear. She couldn't keep this secret to herself forever. Sooner or later, she would have to tell somebody the truth. The next morning, Ada woke up feeling heavy inside. She hadn't slept much and her eyes felt sore. As she dressed for the day, her mind raced. Should she tell Auntie Ekaite what happened? Would Auntie Ekaite believe her? What if Mr. Collins found out and sent her away? The thoughts swirled around in her head like a storm. In the kitchen, Auntie Ekaite was already busy preparing breakfast. The smell of fried eggs and fresh bread filled the air. Ada walked in slowly, trying to keep her face calm. But Auntie Ekaite noticed right away. "Good morning, my dear," she said with a small smile. "You look tired. Did you sleep well?" Ada nodded quickly. "Yes, ma," she said, but her voice was quiet. Auntie Ekaite raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? You don't look like someone who had a good sleep." She wiped her hands on her apron and came closer. "Ada, remember what I told you. You can talk to me about anything." Ada hesitated, her hands clutching the edge of the table. She looked around the kitchen to make sure no one else was there. Then in a small voice she said, "Auntie Ekaite, something happened." Auntie Ekaite pulled out a chair and motioned for Ada to sit. "Take your time, my dear," she said softly. Ada sat down, her hands were shaking. She told Auntie Ekaite everything. How Mr. Collins had been watching her, how he had tried to touch her the night before, and how scared she felt. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she spoke. Auntie Ekaite listened quietly, her face growing more serious with each word. When Ada finished, Auntie Ekaite placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "My dear child," she said softly, You did the right thing by telling me this is not your fault and you should never have to feel unsafe in this house. Auntie Kaite sighed deeply. We need to be careful, Ada. Mr. Collins is a powerful man, but that doesn't mean he can do whatever he likes. I'll think of a way to help you, but for now, stay close to me when you can. You ever feel unsafe? Come to me immediately. Promise. Ada nodded, her tears slowly drying up. Auntie Kaite handed her a clean handkerchief and gave her a small smile. You are a brave girl, Ada. Don't forget that. The rest of the day, Ada stayed close to Auntie Kaite whenever possible. She felt a little better, knowing she wasn't alone. But deep inside, she was still afraid. What if Mr. Collins tried something again? What if he got angry because she had avoided him? Ada didn't have all the answers, but she trusted Auntie Kaite to help her figure things out. That night, as Ada lay in bed, she thought about her family back home. She missed them so much it hurt. Mama, I wish you were here, she whispered into the darkness. I wish I could tell you everything. Ada didn't know what the future held, but she promised herself one thing: she would be strong, just like her mother had taught her. No matter how scary things got, she wouldn't give up. She would find a way to protect herself and make her family proud. One afternoon, Ada was mopping Mr. Collins' private bathroom and suddenly a door opened and she looked up and it was Mr. Collins. She was afraid but pretended to be concentrating on what she was doing, mopping the floor. Mr. Collins sat on his luxurious bed and was looking at Ada's backside waist, admiring her and imagining how good it would make him feel ravishing her. He stood up and went and tapped Ada's behind with his two hands grabbing her ass tightly. Ada was so afraid and with the mop in her left hand. Sir, kindly let go, please. Leave me alone, she uttered. Mr. Collins was sweating and dripping. He tore Ada's top and stripped off her undies and violated her. Ada screamed for Auntie Ekaite to come save her. But unfortunately, Ekaite had gone to the market. Ada never expected that Mr. Collins would come back home by that time of the day. He normally comes home late at night. Ada's clothes was soaked with blood and was in pains as she staggered to her small room and cleaned herself up, sobbing and bitterness. Few minutes later, Auntie Ekaite came back home from the market and met Ada crying in her bedroom, grabbing the bedsheet tightly, soaked with blood. Ada, what happened? Why are you crying? Did anyone die? Auntie Ekaite asked, but Ada kept mute. Few months later, Ada noticed she was pregnant as she throws up every morning. Her body was shiny and her face swollen. Ekaite asked if she was pregnant. What? Replied Ada. Ada, you look pregnant. At my age, I can detect pregnancy when I see one. Ada, what happened? Who is responsible for this? Don't lie to me. Mr. Collins, right? When did this happen? Ada cried and explained everything to Ekaite. He raped me, Ada cried. Ada, why didn't you say this on time? What are we going to do now? It's wise you confront him, Ekaite said. How possible is it to confront him? Ada replied. Yes, you need to because what he did to you is not fair. Who is going to take care of this baby? Remember, everyone in your family is hoping on you for a better life. Early around 7:45 a.m. on Saturday morning, Mr. Collins was on his dining sipping on his hot chocolate drink when Ada approached him with fear. Sir, so she shuddered. Please, I would like to tell you something. What is it, Ada? He asked. Sir, I am pregnant. Mr. Collins looking at Ada in shock and replied, Are you stupid? What is my business then? See, I don't want to see you anywhere around my mansion. Stupid fool, so he slammed at her, tears streaming from Ada's eyes as she quietly went into her small room and packed her bag to leave. Thank you for watching Story Bees. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, share, and subscribe for more amazing African tales and bedtime stories. See you next time and keep the stories alive.